Okay, we're here for another episode of Alarm Nerds. We're back from our hiatus, and we have a very special guest with us today. I'm Dave Schwartz, the host and owner and operator of EMES and Life Safety. We focus on consulting in the security space, on growing your business, and also doing design, technical, and sales training. And with us today, we have Ed Newman, the founder and principal of Redcoat Media, a California-based marketing firm who specializes in our industry. So he has almost 20 years of experience specific to security, and he's going to share with us a little bit of his background, and we're going to pick his brain a little and see, for us little guys, what can we be doing better and how can we grow and compete with the global entities that make us feel small. So Ed, thank you very much for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me, mate. I really appreciate it.
So why don't we jump right in? So I mentioned that, for many of us in the industry, we're not these globally recognized names. So what does it mean to establish a brand identity? How do I go out as the small business looking to plant my flag and develop some sort of a reputation in my territory?
Yeah. Well, I always go on about kind of two words, and one of them is perception, and the other one is consistency. And really, when you're creating a brand identity or a visual identity, you get to decide kind of what your potential audience sees. It's like a really nice place to be, and with that comes obviously a great responsibility. You have to consistently put out a message that tells your audience exactly kind of what you can do to help them. A lot of things I see, like wrong messaging would be that you just tell people your services. But a brand identity is more focused on what you can do for your customer. It's more of like what pain points you can fix for them. And obviously there's in the security industry, we've got so many different niches and facets, from guarding all the way to alarms and monitoring and executive protection, etc. So you've got to figure out exactly what your audience wants or needs to hear from you to differentiate yourself, and then consistently message that with the same branding. Like you got to pick a couple of colors, you got to pick the same fonts, you got to create this brand identity that as soon as somebody sees it, they go, oh, that's that company. And if you look at, your big famous companies, your Apples, your Nikes, your, any of the kind of luxury retail brands, as soon as you see it might be a picture or it might be just the way they've written something, you half the time instantly go, oh, subconsciously know that that's a Nike advert, or that's, a Burberry advert. So sticking to a clear, the way you're putting out your brand consistently, and then also messaging consistently is kind of the best way to establish it. And I can talk forever on this subject. So,
well, you bring up a good point, though. You bring up a good point, which is identifying the pain points that are relevant to your customer base. So we had a guest on a little while back who talked about, if you get a bunch of companies in a room and you say, what is your differentiator? What makes you unique? 9 of them are going to say, we provide the best customer service.
Exactly.
And if everyone says that, then it doesn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
You can.
Yeah. Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I talk to a lot of my customers. Half of my job is trying to sell what we do as a company. And I always ask, what's different about your company? And if they're a guarding company, I hear the same 5 things: training, say service and things like that. And I'm like, that's not everybody says the same thing. And that's the same with monitoring, alarms, everything. So yeah, it comes down to, I think, if you're a small business owner, you are the one that has to decide or find out what's different about your company. And ultimately, that could be you, and that could be if you're developing a personal brand, you can co-create a brand with you and your company And so people see you as a very knowledgeable expert, and then they'll come to you because of that. And you are then the differentiator. But if you're looking at services, it's very hard to differentiate unless you're one of these big behemoth companies that is putting so much money into, say, R&D, and they're creating their own products. The small guys don't necessarily do that, because you can't. So it's hard to differentiate yourself. Right?
So on that note, talking about looking at the big guys who have more resources available to them, let's look at something as simple as just getting my name out there. I mean, if I look at things like Google, or if I look at Facebook marketing, there are a lot of different ways that I could spend money to try and make my name rise up the charts, but I'm always going to be competing with someone with a bigger budget. So what are some other ways to get your name out? Obviously you should still be doing these things, but what are some, I'll say unconventional ways to get your name out into the region that you serve?
So then, the word unconventional generally means that it hasn't been done before, or
all right, let's say lesser known.
Yeah. And so, it depends on your company and what you're providing and what your geographic territory is, things like that. If you're a national company, you've got to do things differently to where if you just service, say, a region or a city. So, if you're a smaller local base, I would, and it also depends on who you're selling to. If you're just selling business to business, that's different. You've got different avenues to go down than if you were doing a business to a customer, B2C. So I would say there's so many different things. Like, you should always do a marketing strategy and figure out where your people are, what's important to them. Something, lesser known. I've got a customer who is in the gardening industry who is killing it, and they're just doing lots of different things. They're using like Nextdoor, they're using Yelp, which, as a marketer, I don't know many professional marketers that use Yelp anymore. But unless it's for, something that's very specific to that locale. But, they're killing it because they're getting lots of work in like Firewatch services. And it's all because of like these small things where they're able to be found by, a Google search because they're on Yelp and they're on these other places. I don't know if that answers your question, but if it doesn't.
No, I think it does. And, it's interesting that these platforms that maybe aren't, they're definitely saturated. There's no question about that. But the national companies aren't necessarily going into these spaces. So like Nextdoor, I'll use that as an example. I'm not that familiar with Nextdoor. I was checking it out for a client. I checked it out for myself. I made an account, I made a business account, and the same day I got a customer that I closed that afternoon. So there's business there. There is business there because these markets aren't being served the same way by the same types of businesses. And it's interesting. But I think a lot of businesses that are out there who are looking at, say, getting my name to show up on Google, getting my name to show up in a Facebook search, don't really understand what's involved with that. And it's a little overwhelming. So I would say at the most basic level, explain like I'm 5. How would you explain what SEO is and how a business can understand if it makes sense for them?
Yeah. So SEO, search engine optimization, like in simple terms, it means it's the process of making you rank higher and be more found, findable, if that's even a word, on Google. Like increases your visibility on Google, and I always say just Google, but there is obviously others doing whatever. I don't know if Ash Jeeves is still around, but if there's a lot of things that go into it, there's a lot of different methodologies like backlinks, on page, off page SEO. There's a lot to it, but if you don't have a good looking website that tells, I always talk about how there's different links in a chain in marketing. So just say you're running an email campaign, or you're doing an ad campaign on LinkedIn or something. Somebody clicks to go to your website. If your website doesn't look good, it doesn't give them the information that they want, then they're not going to be converted into either being more interested. And I also always talk about like marketing is like dating. You've got to woo the person into eventually marrying you, and that takes time. So if they're not seeing the right messages on the website, then they're not going to convert to being a buyer or be interested in finding more, and they'll just go somewhere else.
So let me ask you, as the expert, my understanding is that to do SEO well, it's a very specialized, technical, complicated skill. The average person is not going to just say, oh, I'm just going to put my credit card in, and how hard could it be? So is it something someone should attempt on their own, or you really need someone to hold your hand that knows what they're doing?
So you can do the basics by yourself. If you use, a Wix or a, Squarespace or one of these, they have the basic SEO kind of, they will say, oh, you need to do this. This needs to be done, kind of like a guide. But truly, if you're a professional business that needs to rank higher for a keyword, so something I left out earlier is when somebody goes into Google and types in alarm monitoring company near me, or a camera installation company near me, you need your page to come up at least on the first page, because people nowadays don't really click past the first page, or they don't scroll down a lot. So you want to be in that top. And the ways of doing it is by paying and sponsoring to be there, which obviously costs money. And the other way is using SEO to, has things on your website that have all these keywords in that people might be looking for, and then start to do backlinks, which basically help Google see that you're more popular and things like that. And the algorithm then pushes you up the page rankings. And this is very basic because, again, like you said, I have people that do this, like a team that does this for me in my company.
Well, I hear this, and what I'm thinking is, like, I think I would be crazy to try and do this myself. I think I would need someone like you to the problem is, can you do this at an entry level? If I'm a small business, maybe I'm a single owner operator, I have 3 employees. Can I afford to do this in any capacity, or is this something that I really need to be larger before I can dip my toe in?
So, everything we do in marketing has a cost ultimately. We're not running a charity per se. So I would say that it really depends on what your level of return on investment looks like. If you're more into the B2C world, ranking on Google is more important than if you're B2B. And that's an opinion. I don't necessarily have any facts or stats behind it, but in my opinion, it's because if you're a B2C, you're generally less educated in that service or product. So you will go to Google and type in, local alarm monitoring company near me. Whereas if you're more of a B2B person, you might be a security director, or you might be somebody in the industry. You're more likely to have met people at an association event or something like that, and know who to go to rather than just Googling it.
Or you're going to be Googling different things. You might be Googling like a model number or some sort of, something more technical where they're going to get, a very different response.
Which ultimately, if you're, we'll talk about alarm monitoring companies, if you probably do both B2B and B2C. So when you're doing your SEO on your website, you need to be factoring for that. You need to have the basic stuff in your blogs that then Google picks up. You need to then have the more technical stuff for the technical people. And then depending on what keywords they're ranking for, you would hopefully show up more readily on that first page.
So you need to have a website that very clearly explains what it is that you do. It needs to, to some degree, it needs to pop. How do you feel about these, like Google or Squarespace or WordPress, these platforms that kind of just give you like a drag and drop, build your own website? Do you think that's fine? or do you think you really need to put money into design?
Yeah, for when I started my company, I did the same thing because I like the way I explain it now. Talking about the links, even if you're not, say, getting true conversions on a website where somebody clicks a button and they input their credit card and they pay for something. In our industry, there's generally like a sales process where you have to talk to somebody. Where our industry is a very trust-based industry, and just swiping a credit card, it doesn't necessarily always cut it. You have to have a face-to-face conversation. So I would say if you're that, unless you're that where they're swiping the credit card, you need a website that shows what you do, but then you also need to have it so they can then get in contact with you easily, or have a way for you to capture their contact details for you to then go to them. And there's different ways you can do that. Obviously, the traditional way is having a form that traditionally people are lazy, so they don't always do it unless they really, really are interested. The other way is having like a pixel on the website, which as soon as somebody goes to that website, your website then captures their like details automatically without them even kind of knowing. And you put it into a database that then automatically emails them to say, hey, ensure you're on our website. Is there anything we can do to help? So I don't know if I answered the original question.
So what's an effective, in that vein, what's an effective way to showcase your work as far as, here are some examples of client testimonials. Here are some examples of some of the logos I've worked with. Here are some examples of, maybe here's some pictures. What's an effective way to tell your story?
All of the above. So obviously, if you're just using a website, you want testimonials, you want case study documents, you want things that say, there was a problem, this is the problem, and make it obviously as simple as possible. This is what we did, this is the result, this is how it got fixed. So, and you don't want it to be pages and pages, you want it to be very, simple and quick. So somebody will read it and get what they need to from it. Everything I basically advise all my customers is don't sell the service or the product, sell the solution that it's going to fix. Because at the end of the day, people don't care if you have an unarmed guard. They don't care if you've got the best camera. And, what they care about is, I've got trespassers. How do I get them off my property? You can say, we do just that, and this is how we do it. Then people are more, likely to click buy.
Well, I think about when I hear you say that, what I think about is there's so many people out there who want to go and they want to say, like your example, my guards are, the best trained. I use the most, top of the line technology. I have the best, my crew can, you'll never even know my crew was there. We do such clean work. And at the end of the day, and then you get a customer who goes like, I don't care. I need this for my insurance. Mm-hmm. So you need to be able to understand what a customer is actually looking for before you go and try and shove something down their throat that's going to just bore them.
Yeah. And every customer is different. And that, obviously we're talking about marketing today, but sales and marketing have such they align so much. That, I always said marketing's about informing, and it's like the first couple of dates where you're just getting to know each other and you're telling them what you can do to help. And then sales is, we're now dating, we need to get married. So, I try and break into that.
So we're talking about how there are different levels of, obviously investment. And I think the biggest focal point has got to just be ROI, whether it's going to a trade show, working, putting money into SEO, putting money into really anything you do, even if it's something as simple as driving to meet a client or hopping on a plane to meet a client, you need to consider the ROI. So say I do that, say I start going to trade shows, say I start spending money on SEO, say I hire someone to build out my website and it starts to work. Do I say, great, it worked, I move on, now I go on and focus on something else? Or once I start, once I put my credit card in, I just need to, I need to just keep gradually increasing, thinking that the more I grow, the more I'm going to have to spend. Is that how it works?
Not necessarily. So I would always say data is, and we talk about this in the security industry a lot, in data. We kind of tell our customers you need to capture data so we can make informed decisions. The same principle. If you're doing, say, pay-per-click, and it's costing you, $5,000 a month or something, then why, and you're not getting the customers clicking on it, then you've got to change something. You've got to adapt. So I wouldn't necessarily say stop always spending the money. You might have to just change your message. It might be that people just aren't resonating with what you're saying. I would always say try different things. Like I mentioned, one of my customers who's killing it. They're doing different. They got their eggs in different baskets. But like with SEO and a lot of marketing, you don't all see a return on your investment like straight away. It might be a 3-month thing. To rank on Google takes 3 or 4 months to start climbing. If you start seeing results, I would say don't stop, because if you stop, you're just going to go backwards, because your competition is going to start doing things and doing more. And if they're getting results out of it, why can't you get results out of it too? Like with the SEO, I would say you've got to give it at least 3 or 4 months, max, minimum. With email marketing campaigns, the same thing. It takes time to, and sometimes you send an email and somebody will respond to that email 6 months later, even though there's been, 20 emails in between. It's just the way it is. So just keep going, adapt, and don't spend money if it's not making you any money. Like, find something else to do.
What's a reasonable amount of time to test something new? And I don't know if this is a very loaded question, but if you're testing something new, what's a reasonable amount of time to see if it's working?
Generally, like 4 months minimum, like 6 would be good. And it just depends on what it is. Like SEO, I'd say it could be 4 to 6 months. So that's why I would say like 3 or 4 months is the minimum.
It also depends on who your client is. If you're, like you said, if you're going B2C versus B2B, if you're selling residential alarm systems that's so transactional, you might see an uptick in like days or weeks, right?
Yeah. If it's more of a transaction thing, you're correct. If it's B2C as well, then you're generally using more pay-per-click, more SEO services, and so people are finding you, and then they will start buying. Depending on how good your sales team is. It doesn't always come down to the best job we can, but if you're not able to convert them on the sales side, or your price is too high, then that's not necessarily marketing's fault.
Well, let me ask you this. So it's very, in the security industry, is primarily a subscription-based model. And there are a lot of businesses out there, like using like Netflix as the example, that follow this like set it and forget it mindset, where the concern is every time you touch a customer, you risk losing them. So a lot of these subscription-based businesses look at, as long as the credit card keeps going through, let's interact with these people as little as possible, unless we're going to try, even to some degree, let's not even try and upsell them, because, if they're paying, they're happy, it's fine. You get people who, they may never even use whatever you're selling them, but, they keep paying for it for years and years and years. But what that also means, that customer has no loyalty to you. So what's a way to engage your current customers, keep them sticky, keep them happy without, or is it, how do you balance that risk of them saying, I really don't, am I really getting what I need out of this, versus them saying, oh my God, this is exactly, we see so much value out of this?
Yeah. I think it comes down to the type of, if somebody's paying you $20 a month, if you lose that $20, it's not necessarily going to hit your bottom line as hard. Obviously, if half your customers leave and then $20, then you're up the creek. But I think if you truly value your customers, and I was brought up in a small business, a small family business, my whole life, and so I was always taught that you have to take care of your customers, and customer service is a big thing, because you want them to keep coming back. So I would say nurturing your customers. One of my customers has a client relationship manager, and that's totally separate from their like operational team that makes things happen. They literally, all their job is to go to their customers, sit down and say, how is everything going? Now, they're less transactional, but, still, what does it hurt to have somebody just call them and say, how's everything going? Are you happy? Have you got any, you could use it to upsell at the same time. You could say, how, is everything, is everything going well? Are you happy with the system? And they might say, oh, actually, the light's been flicking on this machine for a little while. I'm not sure. And you say, oh, let's send a service technician out. There's that customer service side to it as well. So I kind of always go back to keeping strong relationships with your customer, even if it's $20 a month or $1,000 a month or $50,000 a month.
But you're right, because that's how you, aside from them, like you said, they need to know you. They need to know your business. They need to have some positive thought of, this is X business that, gives me the warm and fuzzies. But when you make that phone call, you may find out about some issue they have that you never would have found out about. And they may have just lived with it and been agitated for the next 6 months, that eventually said, you know what, find someone else. And then you have no idea why they're leaving.
People, like when I go to a restaurant, if I have mediocre service or less, then I just usually keep my mouth shut and walk out and just go, I'm not going there again. Unless it's either the worst service I've ever had and I'm just so shocked by it, or it's really good service, those are the two times I will say something like, thanks, it's been so amazing. Or, there was a fly in my suit or a hair, in our burrito, or something like that. So, yeah, like most people, I think, will just be quiet and then find somebody else who they think can take care of them better.
I think that's a very fair point. So we're getting close to the end of our time, so I just want to jump into a couple of the questions that I like to ask every guest that we have on. So I think it's probably a little more specific to the alarm space, but we have this expression called trunk slammer, which is generally used as a derogatory term for someone who, I guess I would say, gets distracted by shiny objects. It's usually a smaller business who goes out after, any opportunity that's out there. And some people look at this as just someone starting out. Some people look at this as, like I said, a derogatory term. What would be your equivalent of that, of someone who's just kind of making it up as they go?
So there's a lot of people out there, and if you go on Instagram and you accidentally click on like an advertisement for one of these people, you'll get 1,000 of them. And there's, it's all these promises like 1,000 leads a week for $500. And you're like, well, how are you getting 1,000 leads a week? It just doesn't make sense. Like, that's not.
Who are those people? Who are these people? Do they, and how are they qualified?
Exactly. And they're not generally. Also, they're for an industry that does, sells toothbrushes or something. It's not the same type of service that we have in our industry. Another one is like, for $200, we'll do social media for you. And it's like the basic social media you can find that, somebody on Canva has literally just copied and pasted a template and wrote your name at the top of it. And they're not going through the marketing process and strategy. They're literally they're going to ask you, well, what do you want to say? And it's like, well, I need you to help me. So like the way we do things is we talk to our customers, we create like a marketing strategy and specifically say for social media, we'll have a social media calendar that hits on all the things throughout the year. We know, we discuss with our customers exactly what they're selling in their business and what the pain points of their customers are, and then we hit on them. Luckily, I know a lot of them already because I've been in the industry so long. But that's that kind of level of service. That's why it costs more, I guess.
So, what would you say is one of the biggest differences that you see in the space today versus, say, 5 to 10 years ago?
AI, obviously, is a huge one. I'm very pro AI, cautious but pro. especially in the marketing world, and a lot of different jobs are going to be able to be done by AI. I think the more of the design elements of AI is coming through. But no, if you don't embrace AI now, then you're going to get left behind. I was talking to my father last week about it, that my grandparents didn't have the internet or a computer, even though they were capable of it. They just didn't, go for it. Whereas my dad's 20 years younger than them or something, so he has embraced it. But now he needs to either embrace AI, but he might not, and then he'll become the equivalent of not having that computer that my grandparents didn't have for the internet. So yeah, just embrace AI and go with it.
Well, it's interesting. I had a client who tried to use AI as their customer service, like online chat. It was just completely AI based. But then I was experimenting recently where I was using ChatGPT to help prepare for an exam I have coming up. And I explained the scope of what I was doing. And I said, I want you to give me sample questions and flashcards. And without going too far down the rabbit hole, basically gave me a question where it said, 2 + 2 = 5. And I said, this question is wrong. And they said, no, it's not. Here's what 2 + 2 is 5. And I said, explain your answer. And it went through basically like a page and a half of formulas explaining how it came to this conclusion. And then at the end said, as you can see, 2 + 2 = 4. And I'm just sitting there thinking, like, what did I, what?
Right. Yeah, it's getting better. It's still like, and I think on the bottom of ChatGPT, they always have that disclaimer that information might not be correct. Use it for things like writing an article for your blog or something, but then don't just copy and paste it. Put your own personality into it. Add some anecdotes or some customers. True, like if you say, write me give me an example of what happened to a customer. It will make it up, but it's not factually true. So you've got to add in I helped this customer do this. This is how I did it. Or you can tell it what happened and then get it to write something and then edit it. So it's more of like a helpful guidance system than a true.
It's not another person.
Yeah, and it's not there yet. It will be,
yeah.
But
so
I'm in here.
On the other side of the coin, what do you think will be the biggest change to the industry in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I think it's AI. I think
it's going to get better and better.
Well, I think what has been the biggest change over the last 5 years, apart from AI coming in, because AI's kind of really only been around the last year, say, that the mainstream started using it. Before that, it was that customers now have so much information at their fingertips that they really can feel pretty informed before they even talk to a salesperson. And that could be down to marketing. It's also down to Google, that they can literally Google something and get an answer. And obviously now Google's got an AI and things like that. It can find those answers way better. But moving forward in the next 5 to 10 years, I think it's going to be purely AI, really, that's going to kind of change everybody's working lifestyle. Maybe some social issues with more Gen Zs coming in. And, millennials kind of did that first part of the fight, and now they're kind of going on wanting better pay, better benefits, and all those things. So I think it's like AI and probably some social issues.
Well, it's interesting because, you think about, 10 years ago, you'd go on a WebMD and say, I have a cough. What is this? And now you can go to ChatGPT or Bard or any of these other programs and say, teach me how to, teach me how to build out an effective marketing plan in this space. Mm-hmm. And it's not going to be perfect, but it's interesting that this capability exists.
Yeah. And I do that a lot. I will ask it, give me 5 ideas around alarm monitoring. And because, it's hard to sit there and think of what I should be posting about. So, you can ask it questions. And then once you've got those topics, you can then either write stuff yourself or you can ask it to start writing a post for you, and then you edit it to make sense for you and your company. But yeah, I'll just say start playing around with it and see what it does.
Well, all right. So I think we're just about out of time. So Ed, how can people find you?
They can find me on my website, which is redcoat-media.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. You'll probably see my face constantly on LinkedIn.
We're gonna post it in the show notes so everyone can find you. We'll have a link. And again, I'm Dave, EMES Life Safety. We'll have my details on there as well. And emesandlifesafety.com. And Ed, thank you so much. And we'll talk soon.
Thanks, mate. I appreciate it.